Well, again, a very warm welcome. The first point I wanted to put to Nigel is looking at the sector. There's a lot right with it, so let's not say that it's doom and gloom. But there are obviously roadblocks on the way to progress. Nigel, first of all, I mean, with Matthew here, I'm sorry to use you like this, but what are the roadblocks that are stopping engineering from making even more progress?
Okay, so I welcome the opportunity to comment on that. As an engineer, a manufacturer, and an exporter, BAE Systems feels acutely that there's a huge opportunity to use the tailwind created around the whole of the engineering and manufacturing sector to make a very wholesome contribution to the economy. There are roadblocks that we can potentially step over if we recognise what they are and work to achieve the outcomes we're looking for. On the issue of immigration, for example, as a defence and security provider, I have to start with the assumption that I have to employ British nationals, and therefore it's important for me to make the whole of the education system and the skills system in the UK work first and foremost. So the whole ethos, the whole mindset is about actually making the UK system work and work well.
Matthew, there was the Prime Minister's trip to India, in which he said the door is open, but there still seems to be some confusion. It's not your department, but what sort of voice can you bring to bear at the table to say we really need to move forward on this issue?
The most important thing that we can do is make sure that the system is responsive to the needs of employers. And my sense is that for a long time the skills system was driven by the funding that the government supplied and the strings that were attached to it, that the courses that were taken were the ones that the funding system said ought to be taken and ought to be put on, and it was run for the benefit of the providers of skills rather than for businesses. And so my drive is to make the system more responsive to the needs of employers and individuals, employers in the private sector, in the public sector, large and small, and also more rigorous. So all of that is with a goal of making sure that people in the UK have got the skills to compete. So when on the India trip, it's terrific if we have the very brightest people from across the world come and study in the UK, and there is no limit for those who want to come and study here on good, genuine courses, who have the capacity to take those courses. But really that's important for HE, but my job is making sure that everybody in Britain has got the skills to compete.
The Employers Federation, I mean, you'd presumably agree with all that, but what I was meaning when I was saying the responsibility is that there's immigration rules. Obviously, if people have the right skills, they're welcome. But do you feel that students have got the message overseas? I mean, India was one example, but you still hear, don't you, that people saying, well, can I come, can I afford it, will it still be there?
I think we shoot ourselves in the foot in the UK. We have some very fine HE institutions. Many of our members partner with them and invest huge amounts of time and money. But then at the end of that qualification process, whilst we produce some very fine engineers in the UK, our systems for allowing them to work in the UK, if they're non-EEA residents, are very poor. So we used to have a route under Tier 1, it was called Tier 1 Post-Study Work Route, that allowed individuals a period of time in the UK, a longer period of time, to find a job in the engineering sector before actually they had to be removed from the country, and we've closed that. So one thing EEF's lobbied for is actually reopening that route, so some of that best and brightest talent that actually we cultivate, we can make use of in the UK.
Well, I'm absolutely hugely enthusiastic about employer ownership of skills. It's at the moment being run as a funding pilot. The way that I see it is we've got to make the whole system responsive to the needs of employers, but also have ensure that we can plug specific gaps that the system doesn't fit. And in that case, the LEPs, the local enterprise partnerships, the city deals, they have a role for fixing skills gaps that wouldn't be supported by the whole system. But it's also important that we have a system that's responsive not only to local communities, however represented, but also to employers and to individuals.
Justin, I noticed you were part of this scheme. Do you agree? Do you have anything to add to that?
So what are the drivers for organisations like Siemens to invest in the UK? And of course, it's probably innovation on the one hand, and if there's innovation, then you can invest in that. But if not, then having the skilled workforce that you need to develop that innovation and produce your equipment is of course very important. But the employer ownership of skills for us isn't just about our own skills, and I think to your point at the beginning, it is all about our supply chain. And actually, as Siemens, we don't have a skills issue per se. There are some niche areas, yes, of course, but we're lucky enough to be able to attract people into our organisation. But a lot of our supply chain isn't so fortunate, and so we're very much involving them in this to say, okay, the smaller, medium-sized, small companies that we supply to, how can we bring them into that fold and equip them with the skills and overall help the UK win that skills race that we need to drive that investment and economic rebalancing here.
This is the fundamental thing about a shortage in the skills system. So the estimates of the shortage of engineering skills vary, and all of them are no doubt inaccurate in some way because it's an unknowable. But what we do know is that there is all of the estimates point to there being a shortage of some kind or other. So things like the Queen Elizabeth Prize that Angie is running, and also big moves to get more women into engineering. If we're failing to tap almost half of the workforce, then I see that not as a big problem, but as a big opportunity and the low-hanging fruit of where we're going to get our future engineers from.